I'm about to talk about the Chibnall era. Please put your tinfoil hats on now.
If you wanna have to leave your home, just mess with a bottle of comb. You gotta make it to the woods if you can. If you can, if you can, you gotta make it to the woods if you can.
The Chibnall era is fascinating. No, I don't mean the actual episodes. They are sleepy tea in televised form. No, I mean the creative choices this era makes are fascinating because they don't just fail, they succeed in reverse. Scientists are still wondering how this era accidentally wrote a defense of capitalism, or how it accidentally made the Doctor complicit in war crimes, or how it accidentally destroyed half the universe and then completely forgot about it. Another backward success, which you might have forgotten about, is the Witchfinders. Here, the team tried to write about misogyny, and instead they made mud pies. But what is the deeper meaning of this episode? And how did it pave the way for Season 14 masterpiece, Dot and Bubble? Today, we'll talk about what discrimination is, what these episodes say about it, and how the Witchfinders walked so that Dot and Bubble could run. How would you define discrimination? A lot of people explain it like this.
Oh, there's a reason. Explanation might be better. It's stupid and ridiculous, but it's the only one that fits. What? A dislike for the unlike?
This is only part of the story. Discrimination is about the relationship between class and power. It's manufactured by people in power to serve their interests. People in power discriminate because it's convenient. It allows them to exploit others and blame them when something goes wrong. But what does this look like in practice? My privileged white behind is ashamed to admit I didn't notice the microaggressions in Dot and Bubble. Microaggressions inflict subtle harms on oppressed groups. They are acts not big enough to be noticed by privileged outsiders, but enough to make the oppressed feel unsafe. There are the obvious examples others have pointed out, like Lindy blocking the Doctor or the predominantly white cast. But did you notice this episode's choice of music? That song Lindy plays is Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini, performed by white musician Brian Hadland in 1960. The lyrics are about a girl afraid to go out in her new bikini, so she hides herself in a blanket or in the water, just like Lindy, who avoids reality by hiding in her bubble. If you're a music buff, you'll know the 60s were an interesting time. In London pre-1948, black people were tolerated but not accepted. Discrimination and violence kept them in their place, so to speak. Post-1948, the UK began to accept more black influence through music. You might know of black rock and roll artists like Shirley Bassey and Ray Ellington, whose music was appropriated by white musicians and inspired new songs. The Bikini Song, which probably wouldn't exist without the black community's influence, is played by a white performer and listened to by white people. It's another example of how we profit from marginalised groups. Like an Instagram picture, the environment in Dot and Bubble is pristine and colourful. This makes the ending more shocking when microaggressions escalate to segregation and supremacist ideology. The bugs symbolise discrimination hidden in plain sight. Slowly but surely, it eats away at society until nothing remains. By starting with relatable, real-life examples of racism, which build to this devastating conclusion, the episode makes us question ourselves and the world around us. But what about the Witchfinders? What does it say about microaggressions? You might think the Witchfinders is a boring Monster of the Week story, but buried under layers of word vomit and technobabble, it has an important point. You'll find the point here in the Doctor's speech to King James. You're scared to face up to the darkness inside you. We're all the same. We want certainty, security, to believe that people are evil or heroic, but that's not how people are.
You want to know the secrets of existence? Start with the mysteries of the heart.
This story is about people afraid of moral ambiguity, so they reduce their worldview to moral absolutes. Meanwhile, they ignore or excuse the micro and macroaggressions done to women. Like the bugs, the Moraks are symbolic. They represent this town's ugly dark side, buried underground. Yet, the truth can't stay buried forever. Eventually, it rises up and confronts you. You see the Moraks evolve from events started by Becca Savage, a woman with internalized misogyny who joins the witch hunts. Like some women in future decades, she feels the need to compete with other women to survive. Becca knocks down a sacred tree because it's ruining her view, just like we put our uncomfortable truths out of sight. Eventually, the tree becomes poisoned, and so does Becca, until nothing's left but darkness. On paper, this is beautiful. You can see how Dot and Bubble built on this metaphor of hidden darkness and constructed a dystopian world around it. The problem is Witchfinders tells us the metaphor instead of showing us, and the end result is so lackluster that your brain rejects it before you can process what on earth it's talking about. The other problem is Witchfinders doesn't depict sexism well. Characters tell you how bad life is for women, but all you see, apart from the witch hunts, is King James citing dumb stereotypes about women which are treated as comic relief. Women are nosy, women are weak, women gossip. Does this sound like a realistic depiction of sexism to you? It doesn't to me. Because it feels so unreal and the story is set in the past, you're encouraged to separate sexism in the Witchfinders from sexism today. You're left thinking that, yeah, things were bad then, but it's all better now, right? And you know what bugs me? Sexism in the 18th century was way more complex than this. In the 1700s, economic conditions were bad. Meanwhile, big changes threatened the patriarchy. Women, who were previously the property of husbands and fathers, were now legal citizens. At the same time, they were learning more about abortion and birth control. The menfolk didn't want women becoming independent, and they needed a scapegoat. So, they made up a story about what a woman should be. And this story was designed to weaken women, physically and psychologically. They dictated what a woman's body should look like, meaning fewer muscles, less fight power. They said women should have soft skin, no calluses from hard labour. Women should wear pretty clothes. These pretty clothes restrict movement and tear easily. Women can't be promiscuous because female sexuality, as we all know, is satanic. Therefore, women can't have authority over their own bodies. Anyone who didn't behave like a proper woman was a witch, of course. This meant any woman living independently of men, like old and unmarried women, or women who owned land. It also meant midwives and healers whose research on birth control and abortion died with them. Women who cursed or scolded, which is basically code for any woman who used her voice. As extreme as this era was, its attitudes towards women echo down into the 21st century. Wouldn't you love it if, instead of telling us how hard a woman's life is, the episode actually showed us, through relatable characters like Becca Savage? Instead, Witchfinders plays into sexist stereotypes. King James complains that women talk too much, yet presumably because the writers want Jodie Whittaker to trip over her own tongue, 13 spouts so much tedious technobabble and puns. I'm not saying that talking a lot is bad, but her dialogue is so boring, she becomes the stereotype the episode is mocking. At the end, 13 gives King James the silent treatment, and this is played for laughs, like, ha ha, women deal with conflict by sulking. Then there's Becca Savage, who is in love with King James. Look, I'm not saying female characters can't have love interests, but must we write another woman whose character revolves around a powerful male historical figure? And do I need to remind you about this line?
Your body filled with my Morax king. Come to me, my love.
You what? See what I mean? Witchfinders wants to critique sexism, but it falls into a shallow and tropey writing of its female characters by accident. The Chibnall era is like a marathon runner who crosses the finish line by running the race backwards. We've spoken about discrimination as a story told to oppress, but who are the storytellers? You may not believe me, but King James is not in the Witchfinders just to recite his Wikipedia article. James is a storyteller. He helped invent this narrative about women and used religion to circulate it. By popping him into this episode, we can show how discrimination begins and where it ends. Unfortunately, the Witchfinders gives us a caricature with mummy issues. He's also several McNuggets short of a Happy Meal. James falls for Graham's unconvincing story about using women to catch women. He repeats his life story to total strangers, despite claiming to have trust issues. And he gets one of his soldiers killed. The script spends the entire 45 minutes telling us what to think about King James instead of letting the character breathe. You learn that James is acting from fear and stupidity. The problem is, people like this are not stupid. They use their intelligence for stupid or inhuman ends, sure, but it takes cunning to manipulate people and maintain your power. So, what does the face of discrimination really look like? You might not think of Lindy Pepperbean as a leader, but as one of the rich elite, she does have power. In Lindy's world, like in the 21st century, power exists on a smaller digital scale. Who likes us and who follows us determines how much power we have, and we can make ourselves superior by putting others down. All it takes is a push of the dislike button. This makes digital relationships more vulnerable to exploitation. We can be friendly to someone while they're still useful, and then disregard them when they're not. Lindy is complex, and the episode shows you this by making you walk in her shoes. Because Dot and Bubble is structured similarly to Blink, you're primed to expect that Lindy will follow in Sally Sparrow's footsteps, that she'll grow through adversity and become a stronger, better person. Instead, Lindy devolves, doubling down on her beliefs until she becomes the monster. Have you listened to Lindy's voice? It's designed to sound like a stereotypical teenage girl. Normally, the pitch of our voice goes down at the end of a sentence. Lindy's goes up, almost like she's asking a question.
Aw, Keeper, you're so kind.
This is called high-rise terminal. It's a vocal feature associated with young women which is often made fun of, even though in Maori culture it's used by both women and men. Women use high-rise terminal to sound less sure of themselves. This reduces the risk of conflict and helps them seem likeable. Lindy uses other linguistic features too to make herself sound nicer. See how she stretches out the vowels in certain words to give them more emphasis?
So kind.
So beautiful!
Oh wow.
Even when she's cursing, Lindy uses really sanitized exclamations like,
Oh, my hopscotch.
but look what happens when Lindy speaks to the doctor.
You are. You're in the same room. You're together.
Immediately, the pitch of her voice drops, she loses that high-rise terminal, and she adds this impatient emphasis to the end of words to make herself sound angrier. The words she uses become more harsh, like calling Ruby and the Doctor stupid or children. What we see is a deceptively clever young lady who knows how to appear likeable, but underneath isn't a nice person. Unlike the Witchfinders, Dot and Bubble understands that discrimination is calculated. It builds on what Witchfinders was trying to do with King James, and instead of just howling at the moon, it demands your attention, making you see the world through the perpetrator's eyes. These episodes end, as you'd expect, on completely different notes. The Witchfinders has a message, which Yaz recites that if we stand up to bullies, everything will be alright. This is a Candy Crush ending, which reduces systemic prejudice to a schoolyard issue. Dot and Bubble shows the terrifying result of prejudice. The Doctor can save the people of Find Time from monsters, but not from themselves. It's a meta-commentary on fans who will never accept the show in its current form, and so will never appreciate this jaw-dropping performance from Ncuti Gatwa. So, Dot and Bubble reopens a conversation started by Witchfinders and takes it further than the Chibnall era ever could. Dot and Bubble is the masterpiece the Witchfinders wanted to be. Nonetheless, I owe the Chibnall era some credit. By casting a female doctor and tackling issues like sexism, it made noble failures which paved the way for noble successes. In media, as in life, the biggest failure is not trying. Thanks for watching Lingua Anomaly. Don't forget that overthinking is a superpower, and there is beauty in the way that you think. Joining you live from the Grand Prix in my recording studio. That was an interesting version of the script. Well done there. Roar, truck, go away. These episodes end as you'd expect. Oh my god, go away. And the blue car is in the lead.